So me and the man, we are sitting in the armory, which the man calls the gun room, because due to his oxygen deprivation, brain damage, they wouldn't let him go in the armory back when he was a little kid, even though he saw the glinting glare. The the armory had a special, you couldn't get through the door on the armory, okay? And the armory was built like some kind of I don't know what you would call it, escape house, they call them, a panic room, but it was like a hurricane room, but except for it was on the second floor, but it was like a well-built room. Like if you had to fend off an attack of Native American Indians, as long as they only had bow and arrows and hatchets and such, believe me, the gun room was well positioned. Although it had a big, giant, beautiful, broad, it was more like a window, and it let all the sun cascade in and bonk around and reflect off of all the linseed oil treated paneling and the gun cabinets and the stocks of the guns it was a beautiful, it was like a treasure. You were inside a treasure chest. It was like the gun room. The man always called it the gun room because he was, they wouldn't let him in there because they were worried he might shoot somebody or himself. So they didn't let him in there because he has oxygen deprivation. But he always said the gun room this, the gun room that. Now, these days, he goes in there to drink his bourbon, his cognac, his stogies, ever so often because it's a rarity, because it keeps it special to him. The Manor House is a big, beautiful, special place, and the man can find all these different nooks and crannies, dumb waiters, real elevators, cellars, underneath the cellars, wine cellars, where they have casks of bourbon imported from a few towns over. The man's family was big into, whatever you would say, Louisville-esque, whatever-esque, that stone that the water all percolates to. It's got to be made of that kind of weird percolated water to get, and it's like Kursk, they call it, makes the best, and the bourbon barrels, this, that, and the other thing. The man was content. He was half shit-faced, but he wasn't stupid or around the bend. And I was just looking at all the glaring and glinting and the highlights. And he hands me 4 slips or 5 slips of paper. It looks like they're written on cocktail napkins with a lady's lipstick, maybe a lady of the night. Definitely, a woman's lipstick. And I was like, I don't have my apparatus, so I don't really think I could paw through these 5 or 6. And the man's like, well, maybe I'll be like, what they do when the music guy is so stupid he can't turn it for himself. Maybe I'll turn your pages for you. But the producer, and I said, ho, you're in league with the producer? Now you're hanging out with the producer and you are buddy with the what? And the man looked at me. He said, listen, son, we could get in the 60s and the 38s till we're blue in the face. Nobody's ever going to pay us no money. We got to get in the thousands and the tens of thousands. The producer's the only one who's got the ability to, whatever you would say, try to juice it up and give us. I looked at him, I was like, but we already live in a fucking manor house. You know what I mean? We already are in the manor house. We already live in the bubble. We are bubble people. We don't have to. But the man looked at me and said, we're so fucking poor. We're cash poor. No, we pay our bills, but no, we're nothing. I said, you go on a glorious vacation once a year. That's not good enough for you? You have had 2 trysts with 2 different women, Madam Yes and Vinegar Gravy, and you fell in with the likes of Coleslaw Coleslaw Jimmy, and this is a boring life you just want to escape from? The man says, I'm not trying to escape from nothing. Maybe I'd like to go visit some of my relatives sometime. I have a better, I'd like to get maybe a newish station wagon with AC, and I have everything in the back. I could sleep in if I want to save in a hotel. Well, you know what? I could drive around anywhere. It's up Mount Everest and back down to the, the other thing, and through the Mojave Desert and over to the cascading lands of New Jersey, whatever it would be, I'd be ready for it. I could camp out in the wilderness. I could camp out in the urbanness. Because, I've got my shotgun, my pistols, everything. I'm armed. I'm licensed to carry. And now the Supreme Court said I could carry any state I want to go to. So, it's happy days for me. If, you could hit a few home runs and we make a little bit of money off this shit. And the producer, he seems to think, I said, you are an oxygen deprivation bastard. He says, listen, the producer told me he thinks he could get a little bit of something going here. Maybe, I could get that station wagon. I drive a Ford Fiesta. Then I looked at the man. I was about to bite him right in his kneecap. I said, that son of a bitch in Ford Fiesta, the AC doesn't even work. You're driving up to a traffic light. Oh, God, please don't let the traffic light turn red because the AC don't work unless you're moving in the Ford Fiesta. You got to be going 45 plus to get a little AC for yourself. So I took the damn things. I was like, what the freak is this horse shit? Right away, I see the name Dilbert. Dilbert? The producer wants me to talk about Dilbert? Dilbert? I was like, Dilbert, the guy who's drawn really poorly with some kind of weird dog erection, kind of spear penis for a tie. This is the Dilbert with the hair? You know, like he's like Bart Simpson wannabe hair. He didn't talk. The Dilbert was the best when he didn't talk, and now we know why. In the old days, I saw comics when Dilbert would talk. I was like, Dilbert doesn't talk. Maybe Dilbert does talk. Maybe they drew a balloon above his head. Maybe it was the cartoon when he came out, he didn't talk. Maybe they wouldn't let Dilbert talk when they made the cartoon. But at some point, Dilbert wasn't talking, and now we know why. Because Scott would have said, hey, guys, you know, if Scott's voice would have been allowed to talk to Dilbert, he'd be like, hey, you guys want to go persecute some black people? You know I hate black people so bad. You want to go deny some black people the vote? Or God forbid we harass or perhaps maybe, you know, steal or kidnap or beat up or whip a black man? Dilbert was going, you want to, look, the black guy just went to the bathroom. Let's go in there and rub salt all over his ass. How we do that? And they're like, Dilbert, I don't think that's what you do. You don't rub salt on their ass. I mean, that's not very. Dilbert's like, I don't know what it would be. Let's just go be racist, horrible fucks. And they were like, hey, that's pretty good, Scott. But maybe the first series of whatever season, Dilbert won't say nothing. Dilbert will be mute. Look it up. It's on Google. Dilbert had to be muted. That's my dog remembered speaking for you. But anyway, so I looked at the man. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? We're going to do this. And the man looks at me and says, if it gets like 45, 50, 60, 75 views, if it doesn't get up like it doesn't get to 100 pretty quick and to 200 or 300, I'll never ask you to do it again. I said, amen to that, brother. And I said, Dilbert. And then it said, quote, we are dropping Dilbert. Dilbert is a nerd name to begin with. So it was already, you could tell, he was trying to send racist connotations. And plus he drew a tie that came up in the end, swerve like a swoosh dog erected penis. It is unfathomably disgusting and wretched. I don't have no balls, so I don't pop too many boners. I pop a boner every once in a while. It's crazy. Somebody pets me just right. I pop a boner with no gonads. I don't even know. You know, it's crazy. Whatever. But to quote this guy, you know, the producer's notes, he's quoting. It's double quotes. We are dropping Dilbert because of Scott Adams' racist rant. Scott Adams, he had a racist rant because evidently he already has all the money he needs. Scott was like, hey, I made it. I paid off my house up in Maine and the plantation I keep in Georgia and all the rape houses I keep for what I do and I'm, you know, living out my darkest fantasies, Scott Adams said. Scott Adams, the perverted nut. It's okay. Scott, he wants the racist rant, so now you can say whatever you want. Scott has certain houses. I think they were in, you know, I don't know if it was Wyoming. I don't know, but it's desolate areas, and they were, you know, Scott was taking pictures, so you could go look him up on Google. On the black Google, it has to be under earth Google, the black market Google, to see what Scott was doing those days. But Scott Adams, he had a racist rant. And to quote Scott further, the producer writes down in double quotes, like you're reading it in the Bible. You know, when you say what God said, but it's a prophet who's quoting God, so it's double quotes. So this is double quote. I would say, based on the current way things are going, the best advice, I would, not could. He didn't say not could. He wouldn't say, I could say, he said, I would say, based on the current way things are going, the best advice I could give. He said, would. Would is more of a writer thing, because Scott's a little penis, that's why I hate the black people, little penis, thwarted, you say thwarted or frustrated writer. He wrote the comic strips because he couldn't write the other things. So he would say, but he was a writer at heart, so he would say, I would say it's a double wood. Who would use a double wood unless you're drawing a dog shaped penis on the front of your character in the comic strip, Dilbert? Whatever, that tie is disgusting. But the quote, Scott, and it's a producer, so it's double quote. The producer wrote it down for me to read. I would say, based on the current way things are going, the best advice I would, and I would give, not could give, because he's would. Would is more affirmative. He says, based on the way current things are going, the best advice I would give to the whole community of white people, or to quote him directly, I would give to white people is to get the hell. Now that's already in quotes. I don't know why that's in quotes, so it's triple quotes. It's the racist purveyor of horrible hate and disgustingness, Scott Adams quote, then the producer's quote, and then somebody else's quote, the paper's quote or somebody, where he's the producer's quote. I don't know who's quoting who anymore. He says, I would give to white people is to get the hell out of Dodge. Only he didn't say Dodge. It was worse. He said, the best advice I would give to white people is to get the hell away from black people. And it was so whatever you say, so mean and cruel. Like, that's so dirty and disgusting. Yeah, I got to get away from Beyonce. I would. Beyonce doesn't turn me on. I got to get away from Rihanna. You know, Rihanna I have to get away from. Somebody's going to say, hey, Rihanna wants you to come over and have a drink with her, and Rihanna start coming all over top of me, you know. Maybe the man would say this. It wouldn't be me, the dog. It would be the man perhaps would say, and, you know, I'm supposed to say, Rihanna, you know, back off because you're so sultry and beautiful, and your big, beautiful lips are so, you know, enticing, and everything about you, your fragrance, everything, when you turn on the charm, all your talent, your thunderous thighs that are so gorgeous and beautiful. Oh, my God, Rihanna's having children now. That's what makes her even, you know. But, you know, all right, so if I was the man, I would look at it like that, you know. You're going to tell me I got to get away from black people? I got to get away from LeBron. I would like to get away from LeBron. I'm not a big LeBron man, but say Jay Moran, come up to me and say, hey, you want me to teach you how to do some sweet moves and we'll play some 2-on-2 or whatever? Jay Moran from who it is, the Memphis Grizzlies or somebody says, you want to hang out and shoot some hoops? Nah, Jay, nah. Get away from me. That's what I'm saying. Get away. You know, I want to get away from all the black people. You know, Michael Jordan, he's sitting there smoking a cigar. You walk past him. He's got like a corn cob pipe sticking out of his mouth. He might be smoking half weed, half busted up cigar. He's there at the Senior Open. He's watching golf. He says, hey, God bless. I can't figure out how do you get to the 11th hole. Can you take me over there? I'll buy you a beer. You're like, nah, Michael Jordan. Fuck you, you black man. I'm getting away from your ass. You know, that's how it would be. With that woman, I forget her name, you know. She looked like the second coming of Lena Horne. And she was one of the Bond girls, and she won an Oscar for a Bond girl or something. I don't know. She's so hot and beautiful. She sits down next to you. She says, you know, I'm done. I'm through with everything. I'm just looking for a sincere, slow-witted white guy that has a nice old rundown manor house. And I'm going to say, get the fuck away from me, lady. Your boobs and your waist and your ass and your thighs and your beauty is too overwhelmingly gorgeous and great. I don't want nothing to do with it. But so, you know, get away from black people. I got to get the hell away from them. Yeah, get away from them. They're no good. Whatever you're going to say. Scott Adams. Good advice. Pretty good. Pretty good advice, Scott Adams. But anyway, so Scott says you got to get away from him. And I was like, hello, the man, to continue quoting the man. He says, hello. What do you think? I'm stupid? When is this new? This is new under the sun? We got to get away from black people, the white people were saying. Believe me, they built the railroad tracks through the town in the beginning when there was no one there. They put a stake on one side, stake on the other. They said white, black. You got to go across the railroad tracks. And if you don't have any black, you shuffle off your poor and your wackadoos and your white trash down there. You know, below on the other side of the railroad tracks are the blacks until it thins out and then it becomes the whites again. Once the population declines and it's open land, it becomes the whites again, you know. But, you know, white people have been escaping black people since America got born. The man said once. I heard him. I quoted the man. It has so many quotation marks you couldn't even figure it out. But, I mean, it's called white flight. And every city that used to be a white city, you know, that's now a completely dark black city. Atlanta, hello, I love you. New Orleans, Detroit, Now Mississippi, what they're doing in Jackson, Mississippi is say, yeah, you can live here, but we're going to control you a la plantation style. It's beautiful, Jackson, Mississippi. And they wonder why Deion Sanders left. But Scott Adams, he must have had a bad interaction with black people. Either that or he's got that black Schwanz envy. Them little dicked white guys. Scott Adams, who knows where he's from? Find out where John Quincy Adams was from. They probably got a lot of Danish blood. Danish are just like the Norwegians and the Japanese and the Chinese. They got no Schwanzes to speak of. The black people have big dongs because it was in the sun. They originated from the sun. That's why if you be careful, Jews sometimes have big giant penises. They're sun people. Your Arabs a lot of times have Schwanzes that are, even though they carry the small Japanistic or Chineseanistic small penis or Danish or Swedenistic gene that produces smaller penises, they're swinging in the warmth. That's where you get the bigger Schwanzes. But I think Scott Adams has a little penis envy, but whatever. It's okay. He can, if you live on the railroad tracks, you're going to understand. One time I heard the man said, because he visited one of his aunts that lived in a beautiful neighborhood once, but it was too close to the railroad tracks, and it became a multi-ethnic neighborhood, and they had a lot of white flight, and they got out of there. But the man's aunt stayed there because she's like, yeah, you know what? If it was all blacks, then maybe I wouldn't stay, but it's like a mixture of blacks. There's Mexicans, there's Cubans, and the Cubans are good stuff, and the Cubans are kind of like close to the whites almost. So you got a lot of influences that help check in the bounces, and there's still a few whites. So the man's aunt, she lived down there by the railroad tracks where, it's whatever goes on. It's all big mush posh like Sesame Street. But anyways, we shouldn't really even be talking about railroad tracks and the concept of, whatever Scott Adams was worried about, because that ain't the way it works no more. In the old days, you have an overseer to control or blast or crash or be horrible to black people. The overseer, I think Scott Adams is wishing he could get an overseer to walk around with him and keep all the black people away from him. Where's Scott going that there's no black people? Does he live in Minnesota? I don't know where there's no black people. No? 0% black people? He never came across a nice black guy? Ever? Scott Adams never had to buy no weed, so he never had a shot to come across a nice black guy. You know what I'm saying? You could have a black mailman. It's the same concept. But Scott is so hateful and he's so scared. That's the horrible thing. Scott, if we all die, and if a bunch of us, me, maybe you, maybe a bunch of black guys, were resurrected, you're going to be sitting there in the resurrection thing going, oh my God, I blew it. I didn't understand. And the black people are like, oh, we have to forgive you because it's, it's heaven, Scott, so you can't, really hold a grudge. But, it's, I remember what you said. I said you would forget, so pretty soon I'm going to forget about it, I hope, because it makes me not like you too much, Scott. You were saying something about, you got to get away, and other things that were just dirty and low down and nasty and scaredy pants, little fraidy cat, whatever, Scott. That's okay. Hey, Scott, somehow, his alter ego, Dilbert, maybe he's not so horribly and racist. I'm the alter ego of the man, and we are both just like them, I think just like Dilbert and Scott, me and the man are all animated characters. We don't really exist. Scott maybe exists. I don't know. But the dog, the man, and Dilbert, we are animated figures. We don't really exist. But what I find to be very interesting is the man's a little conservative, and he would never say any of the things that Scott Adams said. So that's a heretofore gone conclusion. But I'm a little more of a liberal alter ego. I thought it was always because I had my balls chopped off. Maybe it's the yin and yang of life. Maybe I'm more liberal because the man's more conservative, and Dilbert was a lot less racist, or at least overtly. You can never see a racist thing. I mean, they need to start studying. Yale University, MIT, they need to have a little thing, a fellowship, so somebody could come in and point out all the things we didn't realize at the time. But now Scott was being so horribly racist. Like where Michael Jackson, no one realized at the time he had us all memorized or mesmerized. We didn't understand it. Hypnotic spell that he was a perverted pedophilic fool building a castle to pedophilia right in front of our eyes. Maybe Scott and some of the professors at Yale, MIT can go through and figure out where Scott was being overtly racist, but we didn't pick up on it because Dilbert was such a nerd and such a dweebus and so ineffectual that nobody picked up on the fact that he was really like a white supremacist bastard, sneaky Pete trying to get in there and convert you and maybe, screw up your thinking napses so you couldn't even figure out what was bad and what was good. And, I don't know. It doesn't matter. So, but whatever. Scott, I love you, brother. I don't anymore, but I did. I love Dilbert. We're going to find out the Far Side guy, It's a funny kind of a thing with the cartoons. All of a sudden I'm realizing Dave Schultz from the Peanuts had a few questions. Dr. Seuss, obviously. Scott Adams is carrying the torch of the white supremacy thing. Whatever. And speaking out about it, I guess Scott's made enough money. And I was like, I don't have to worry anymore. I got all the money I need so I can start letting everybody know what Dilbert really thinks. Oh, brother, what a world we live in. Hey, I don't know if I can thank the homosexuals. You couldn't stay closeted. You have to be, everybody's to come out now. So now Scott Adams is like, hey, everybody's coming out. There's going to be Scott Adamses. There's going to be, we already had all the other things. So, there's going to be people with fish hands and all this other bullshit and Nightwalker head and whatever you would say, some kind of ass, like a monkey ass, like a bunch of people who say, I identify as a monkey's ass. I got to have my big baboon red ass hanging out for everyone to see. We're going places, boys. We are going places, and you know what I say? Unfortunately, it doesn't matter.